Hello everyone, welcome back to Getting There with Hear&How.
Hi guys, this is a mini episode of our podcast and we're just trying to be as organic as we can because we're just trying this fun experiment of walking around and getting there with
Our feet.
With our feet.
Okay, so I think one thing that we've been talking about a lot over the last couple of days is we're trying to be authentic, right, on social media because that's our main platform. How do you go around doing that? Like, how are we being authentic when finally we're putting out supremely curated, planned out content?
Like it's a mix of planned also, but we're trying to be more organic about it.
Yeah, so I think that's something which many creators, like all of us, struggle with, which is how do you show up as your most authentic, real selves when it is you're feeding the algorithm, you're feeding into the machinery, you're feeding into what people want to see from you. How do you go about doing that?
Asking me.
Like how do we go about doing that?
Of course, like over time now, we do think that it comes very naturally, organically to us.
Yeah.
But it's also a result of years of practice.
True.
Right? It's
True.
not just something we think about today and just put out.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah.
because we're always working, like, since a while we've just been working towards all of this.
True.
And the even the content we consume helps us kind of prepare for what we actually put out there. I think it's a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And it's just consistently what we have been doing, which makes it feel more organic.
True.
Because we don't recognize the back end of it anymore. So
Perhaps.
Maybe
Perhaps.
it feels very organic.
Yeah, like it feels very second nature. But
Yeah.
I think one major part of this is where we're very methodical when it comes to the ideation. Like when we're writing down ideas to shoot, when we're writing down things that we want to convey, it's very like to the point and it's like listed out and all of that.
Yeah.
But when we're actually
Doing
creating,
it, yeah.
I think that takes a backseat where the concept is
Correct.
there, but we are very open to the process. Like if something
Yeah.
changes, for instance, we're shooting and something happens and it doesn't go according to the original plan.
Correct.
I feel like we don't let it sway us.
That's true.
Now,
That's
or
true.
like it sways us very little.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're like, okay, this is what we got. How do we make the best of this now? Or like sometimes when
Correct.
if we're shooting for something like a reel or like which it's a lip sync thing or whatever, and one of us is like, oh, that's a bad take, like I don't like what I'm doing there.
So often.
we entertain it only for like a hot second.
Yeah.
After that we're like, shut up, it's
Exactly.
good, it's good to go. Like
Yeah.
sometimes when we're working for ourselves, on our own content, I feel like we become the worst kinds of editors.
Yeah. And
we
critics for ourselves.
very critical, very negative when it comes to like what should go out.
Correct.
But when you work together with someone else,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's easy for that person to be objective about what you are putting out and vice versa.
True.
And I think we do that for each other.
That's true. Always.
Always. So I
Yeah.
feel like finding someone firstly who can be your editor, else you be your own editor. But I think Radhika had taught us this, where she said, be your own writer, then take a break and come back as your editor later.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when you write and edit at the same time, you're limiting the process of your creation. You're making it very, very curated and very, very constricted. Whereas your writer, like the writer in you or the creator in you needs to be more free flowing.
Correct.
Everything needs to come out.
Yeah.
Whereas the editor can come in later and be like, I'll be kind towards what you have created, but we don't need all of it.
Yeah.
That's when you get rid of what's not required.
Yeah. So I feel like even if we're playing different roles in our own creative process, switching from one role to another
Yeah.
for your own work
Yeah.
can be difficult, but it's also just about shifting that mindset of being like, I created this and now I'm going to edit it with a different mindset.
Yes.
I have to be kinder to the creator in me who has made this.
Yeah.
And now I have to edit it from a point of view that could work for more people,
Yeah.
for the creator to reach a wider audience.
True.
You know?
True. Like,
So-
editor needs to think about all of the world. Editor needs to think about context.
Correct.
Editor needs to think about what is the most essential part that we need to convey. but creator needs to think about
Correct.
what all is coming up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So I think when you play both roles for yourself, it does get very tricky, and I feel like it's easier said than done.
Of course.
All of us have experienced this, where you write and edit or create and edit or shoot and edit at the same time in your own head, and you're like, this is bad, this won't work, this take a shit, like whatever.
Yeah.
But that's why I feel like that separation of even place, like physical
Even
place.
space, yeah.
If you're writing or creating in one place, then edit in another place.
Correct, yeah.
And I think that was
It
a
shifts
very good
immediately.
insight.
And I feel it takes off the pressure also from the creator. Like you almost tell yourself that, okay, I just have to make it.
Yes.
And then someone else is going to think if this works.
Yes.
So you just give yourself the space and time to keep making without that constricted
of-
thought.
Yeah. Like
of-
often I like to make on one day and leave the editing or leave the fine tuning
Yeah.
or the sharing to another day completely, because
Yeah.
getting that kind of distance from your work is also necessary when you're doing it
True.
for yourself.
True.
Like obviously today if you make something and show it to me, it's new for me, so I can critique or edit or give it like a give my opinion very easily.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm doing it for myself, I'm too attached to it. Like I'm too
Exactly.
close to it.
Yeah.
In distance, in thought, in everything. So
Yeah.
I feel like it makes a big difference when you're taking that much time to get back to what the work could
Yeah,
be,
yeah.
kind of a thing. Okay, question. If your work didn't need you to be on social media,
Correct. Or if your work didn't directly relate.
like it
If your
wasn't
work didn't-
dependent
yeah.
on social media to an extent, would you be on social media? How often would you post, and what would you post? Would it change what you do now?
Correct. Very honestly speaking, as much as I would like to believe that everything I put on my socials is very honestly me, being myself, the dependency of my social media on my work is really high, at least in my head. I don't know if people are actually only giving me work because I have a social presence, which is not much to be honest, but it is.
Yeah.
So at least in my head, I have that notion that a lot of my work depends on social media. So every time I think of the content I'm making, I kind of have an audience in mind, for it. Because
Like subconsciously.
yeah, subconsciously,
Correct.
or at least I'm thinking that if I'm making even if I'm making content for myself, I'm
Yeah.
thinking how could this be fine-tuned or twisted around to be appropriate for a brand to use,
Got it.
so that can at some point become that can be monetized.
Like a monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if that were completely removed from the picture, then, I mean, honestly, I do have fun with my work,
Yeah.
with my social media also. But if that were to be removed, I think I would not care. I would not care if my personal thoughts or expression or aesthetic matches with any brand.
Yeah.
I would just make and leave it at that.
But you would share. Would you share?
I would share.
You would
Yeah.
share.
Because I think over time I've realized that I am an expressive person.
Really?
Really. And I think that almost is dependent on there being an audience. So,
I mean, yeah,
I like
validation
that.
is a thing,
Yeah,
finally. Like, we
absolutely.
live in a society, we don't live in isolation. And it's a very human need to want validation
Yeah.
outside of yourself also, like to an extent.
yeah.
Okay,
And
interesting.
so I think I would still share. Maybe the content would be different, it would be more free flowing, and I would not give, can I say?
Two hoots.
Two hoots. I would
Actually,
not give.
no, I mean, we can say.
Okay.
It's
No,
not
but I would not give as much importance to the end result.
Got it.
Like I would not care how many people have viewed it, how many people have maybe engagement. I would still
Yeah.
care that is it relatable to people. Maybe I would want to know.
Okay.
But even if it's not, I'm like, okay, this was a thought I had.
I put it out there.
Selfishly have put it out there.
Yeah.
Even if it's two people who just think, oh yeah, I do that too.
It's
Still
enough.
works for me. Yeah. What about you?
I think if we would have spoken about this, say, even a year ago, my answer would have probably been a little different. Where I feel like now I've come to the point of I don't care. So whatever I would put out there, even if social media it didn't have to be that active on social media. Whatever I'd put out there, it's what I would do even now.
Anyway.
Yeah, like I've reached that point now. I feel because like you said, it's been so many years of engaging with these platforms, seeing them change, and especially in the last 5 years, drastically change.
Yeah.
That you realize that finally the only thing that doesn't change is your want to put something out there, your want to belong, your want to share your, ideas, your opinions, your thoughts. And only the medium will change, some context will change, but that can't stop, because finally that is what makes you unique as a creator, and that is again an inherent need.
Correct.
So I've realized that only when I tap into that and focus only on that, do I feel happy with the end result. And then for me, whatever I'm getting from it is just a cherry on top. Like if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't come, it wasn't made for that.
Correct.
And I'm not trying to be like, oh my god, I'm so zen and I've reached it. I also obviously crave validation.
Yeah.
It's not like I don't. But I think now I can very easily separate, not very easily, but I can separate what is like for work, little curated, and what is just for me.
Yourself.
And then I adjust my expectations also accordingly, where I don't expect anything external to come from the just for me things.
Correct.
I'm sharing it because I felt like sharing it. I didn't feel like I want to share in order to receive something from it.
Yeah.
That vibe, so that is my take currently.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like your content in general has that demarcation.
Yeah.
Of for yourself, for your audience, and for the brands you work with.
Yeah.
So I think
if that is true, then that's awesome, because
that
I but I know, one thing that always bothers me, and I always question myself also. I'm like, okay, I'm doing all this, but where does the curation end and where does it become performative? Ki this is everything is curated. We know that.
Yeah.
Nothing is ekdam spontaneous. We wouldn't
Correct.
be recording it.
Yeah.
If it was that spontaneous. But where does it stop being curated and where does it become to appease or to bring a reaction, to incite, to appeal to someone? I'm little bit struggling with where do you draw that line?
The line between curated and
like being performative,
like goal oriented, or
not really goal oriented, but I would say doing something because you are shooting, doing something because you're on camera, doing something because it's a vlog, and not doing it because you would do it anyway. Because all of us have personas, right? Like
Correct.
in front of the camera, I'm sure, like normally I don't walk like this. I will walk like a
even
duck
I'm
like
thinking,
this.
Yeah, because when he moved also, I was like,
Yeah,
okay.
like we're obviously we are aware of the camera, and to an extent it alters how we will be in front of it. To an extent, it's natural. But when we post, especially, it lives on for a long time on our feeds, forever on the internet. Where do we draw the line between like, this is something which I have made and then little bit edited, curated and put out there, to this is something I've made because I know it'll incite some reaction.
Correct.
Like how to do that? It's a very fine,
Yeah,
it's like a dance
I feel like that can only come with absolute no regard for a monetary gain, at least in today's world, where a lot of social media also has become commercial.
True.
Right?
True.
So many people, creators, influencers, are depending on social media for their livelihood, which initially it was not the case.
No.
Like all of these platforms were never business oriented. They were very individual, people oriented.
Yeah.
So they started out as a medium of expression.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
And now that medium of expression has been monetized.
Yeah.
So I feel like drawing that line will be really like a line in the sand. That's the thing. No?
Yeah. Line in the sand.
Like drawing a line in the sand.
Basically,
because,
you don't know where it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
True. Like, but how do you get around to doing that? I wonder.
I do think that it's going to be really difficult for people in general to draw a very to
obvious
make a stark difference between I do this for myself and I do this for the audience.
Yeah.
Because
but it's like that's the thing, right? Like some YouTube creators, especially the bigger ones, like say Mr. Beast, for instance. Like a lot, like his stuff is all I mean, it's huge. It's on a big level. And of course, it's a very idea-based creator mentality where the idea is so extravagant and crazy and wild that it gets those views.
Yeah.
But it's also like him giving someone's house a complete remodel, him giving away a car, him
Exactly.
paying someone's loan off.
Correct.
So it's a mix, right? But then where does it become like I feel like all these creators also must be, their teams must be really thinking about this, where how much of this is because we want to help, how much of this is because we want to be known as those people who are
Who help.
helping. That is, I feel like it's such a tricky space to be.
Absolutely, and you can never know.
You will never know. And
you
I
can
feel
never
the
know.
only way you know is you do something,
Correct.
it gets some flack,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
you're like, oh, maybe this was a little misguided.
Correct. Yeah. And it's like the whole debate, like, is there any selfless act, at all? So I think social media is just that, because even if you do it with a complete
If you're
good
recording
intention,
it.
if you're recording it, you're putting it out there,
Yeah.
kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
But again, like, there's no harm to it, because
Like it becomes that thing about how can we judge?
Yeah.
Because if I'm putting a video out there of me like brushing my teeth and doing my skincare, I'm doing it. I could do it in silence in my house with no cameras on me.
Yeah.
It's a choice finally to put it out there.
yeah.
And then it's like, okay, this is my kind of choice that I've made. Someone else will make a slightly bolder choice, which I
Correct.
may not agree with, but
Yeah.
I can't really judge them for it unless it's like completely inappropriate or violent or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like that part is interesting and tricky, and I always like to see the creators who I personally enjoy like viewing their content. I always like to see how they do it, because I think they are treading that on that line very well, knowingly or unknowingly.
Yeah.
It's interesting to like study their trajectory and see
Correct.
what they've done over time, how they've changed based off of what's important to them, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I feel that attracts your audience a little more as well. Again, I think it's a very like a cycle that when you're putting work out there, or when you're putting yourself out there more authentically,
Yeah.
I think it attracts the right kind of audience that is pulled towards you because you're just being yourself.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the thing. I feel like if you can't tell for yourself, and the people around you can't tell you, and the teams can't tell you, your audience will tell you if it's coming off as inauthentic, if it's
Yeah.
coming off as performative.
Yeah.
That is one short way of knowing. We're just scared of putting it out there and getting something rejected.
Correct.
But there's no other quicker, like obvious way
Yeah.
of getting feedback.
True,
It's
true.
the people who are choosing to follow you, who
Yeah.
are choosing to buy your work, who are choosing to engage with your work.
Yeah.
They are the ones who are going to be most honest and authentic with you.
Yeah, and that should be the case,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because you can't always know what will work,
No.
what's good for you, for the audience. You can't know it
Yeah.
unless you try it out.
And like
And-
beyond the algorithm,
Yeah.
that is what is the way.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
how else do you know?
Correct. I feel even if your work gets rejected,
Yeah.
or like even if you're a brand and something does not work,
Yeah.
and you continue to work on it,
Yeah.
I still feel that that's progress.
Yeah, like it's worth examining why something didn't work and why something did. Like what were the metrics involved? What was the idea? How was it put out there? When was it put out
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
There's value in that, because once you recognize what your audience wants from you, and once you recognize what the pain point is, then it's just being creative about how can we put this idea or this solution out there in different ways.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
basically, I feel like, good marketing does that, right? It just identifies what there's a gap, and how do we fill it in 15 different ways so that people don't realize that we're filling the gap, but then we are
Correct.
ultimately filling
Yeah,
the gap.
yeah.
But yeah, so I think this is a obviously endless discussion about social media versus like no social media and how to go about it and be as authentic as possible. Why don't you tell us how you try to be more authentic on social media? What are your struggles with it, and where do you struggle the most, I guess,
Yeah.
with putting
Yeah.
yourself out there, putting your work out there? And let's have a discussion about it.
Yeah, because I think that's the whole point of this. As much as we love talking to ourselves, we love getting in conversations with people we don't know at all.
Yes.
Like we said,
Yes.
that's the only way to know how even if it's working.
Yeah.
So we would love to know how you go about your struggles and like.
Also, what's worked for you?
Pleasure.
Pleasures. What's worked for you?
What's worked for
What
you
you've
on
learned
social
over
media?
time, because it looks different for all of us. So yeah, please let us know in the comments, and also let us know if you like this format of doing things.
And what you'd like us to talk about,
Yeah,
because we have a lot
to talk
talk
about. Also follow us on Instagram, because we do fun things there, fun content, workshops, events, other things.
really like funny stuff that you will laugh at.
Yeah. Also
Laugh
say hi to Punch,
Hi Punch.
who's behind the camera and has been handling us very well.
Yes. Hello.
Hello. Okay, and bye.